And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Waxéla Sananda, author, Galactic Shaman, Embodied Ascension Trainer, who's had contact with Anubis beings. Waxéla, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I'm excited to be here and really appreciate this opportunity to share my story and be with you.
Well, we're excited to have you. And I'd like to take you back to the beginning and how you had encounters with galactic or ETs as a child.
Yeah, so it started when I was really young. My earliest memory of visitations, I was probably just around 3 years old. What I remember about that time is being asleep in my bed. I was on a second story at the top of a hill. And so it wasn't common to see a light in my window. Even at that age, I knew something was strange. So a light showed up in my window, came in. There was a being standing there who was quite terrifying to me at the time. He was an insectoid, he looked to me like a biped cricket, like a cricket standing at my window in basically like a spacesuit. And then I got really freaked out, as anybody would, and I tried to scream and yell and thrash around in my bed, but I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. I couldn't make any sound. So that was terrifying as well. And the next thing I knew, I was inside like a container. It was an energetic container. I could call it like a cocoon, where there was all this pressure and energy all over my body. And it felt like it was just such intense energy. And of course, I had no idea what was happening to me. And I could see a cord, like a silver cord kind of going out the room, out the window. And the cricket guy just kind of stayed by the window and observed everything. And I was trying to scream and thrash around the whole time. And then I was able to get to the side of my bed. And what's crazy is there was no reason for me not to fall out of bed. I was a small child and I was on a mattress that was up, raised, and I stuck to the side of the bed. Like it felt like pins and needles, like prickles, all up and down my entire body. And then suddenly all the energy left and I fell to the ground and I stood up and I heard in my mind, don't tell the adults, they won't understand. And then I got back in bed, put the covers over my head and went to sleep. And so this is one of many odd experiences and visitations that I had as a child, but that one in particular stayed with me and I would get flashes of it. So much later in life as an adult, I really wanted to understand what was that? What happened to me? And I went and did a hypnosis session. Actually, it was a QHHT practitioner that took me into that past, it was, usually they do past lives, but this is a past time in this life. And I got to interview that insectoid being that was, or, ask questions like, what is going on here? Tell me what happened and why did it make such a big impression on me? And so what I was told is that you are from a galactic council. There are various races of beings on this council. You volunteered. They had to send someone down here. And you were the one. I always say, like, maybe I drew the short straw. I don't know, but I chose to be the one to be sent here from that galactic council. So I had a pre-incarnational agreement to send and receive information to and from them. And that's what that cord was. That was an energetic connection that was happening. So I believe this is why I've been able to channel and see galactics and had these visitations, because I was connected to this council from the beginning, from a very early age. And so that gave me a lot of good information. So I could understand, well, what in the world is, happening to me and why me, why have I had all these experiences? And, I will say, like, much, much later in life, I decided I've gone through a sovereign journey where I wanted to be very much my own being, my own person, my own, like not be connected to anything outside of myself other than the divine itself. And so I went through a shamanic cord cutting where I did choose to sever that connection to my council and then explore my spiritual awareness and consciousness evolving without that connection, which was wonderful. And then years later, after I really had some experience in not being in that connection, I went back and kind of renegotiated the contract, so to speak, where there's no interference allowed unless it's on my terms or unless I reach out and specifically say I would like to interact.
Do you think that you are a bipedal cricket being having a human experience?
No, that's a little of a misunderstanding. So the cricket being, the insectoid itself was just like a sort of like a soldier, a worker. Like he was just there doing the job that needed to be done. The council that I come from, well, yeah, there is an insectoid race being on that council. That's not the race that I actually represent here. I don't really have any soul history that I can recall of being an insectoid creature, but they do exist. And some people are. That's just not my personal experience. But that one was just there to do the job.
Well, you wouldn't be my first guest claiming that you are some other being having a human experience. And even if you're not a cricket being, you could potentially be something else. Do you have any recollection of what you were prior to this incarnation?
I do. And honestly, Jeff, I think that many people, I mean, I don't think it's just a small number that have these galactic histories. I think many of us do. And there was a call for galactics to come to this realm, and that many people answered from their other races and other dimensions. And so I think there are a lot of us. And, I see this realm as sort of a consciousness experiment. And so I think that we've been many things. I myself do remember being a number of different races and beings, including like a feline being, a cat type of being, which is Lyran. I've been a mer being, an underwater being. So I've lived both as kind of like a humanoid mermaid, if you want to say it like that, type of being, as well as, and that's from Sirius B. I have strong memories from there because I came from there. My consciousness arrived from here most recently from there. So I was light in the water. I was a light being that I didn't really have my own form other than like the waves of light behind me. I didn't do that intentionally, but kind of like a form like that, a wave of light and water that I would deliver messages to and from different beings and places. And let's see, I have memories of being a number of other just kind of different beings that I don't necessarily think I have a name for, or that, maybe aren't obvious to people. If I did have a name, they wouldn't know what I was talking about. I've seen myself and re-experienced myself in various different places, many different places. So, yeah.
I've even imagined or thought to myself, like, what if we're all like praying mantis beings and we're here having a human incarnation, and the game is so good or the simulation is so good that it seems preposterous for us to even think we're a praying mantis being.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. I think that we're all something else, or more than this. There's more of us, and when you start tapping into, like this work that you do and interviewing people, obviously that's going to expand your mind, and people watching it, their minds are going to expand. And when we open up the aperture, like when you have a camera and you start to open it up and you start to get these panoramic views, you see more of yourself. We're so much more than this one experience. And people start to let that in and realize, oh yeah, I'm connected to everything. And we are connected to collectives, soul families, and soul groups where we can tap into our soul groups, families, and incarnations. And as we expand our awareness, it gets really, really big. So we can tap into just about anything we can imagine. And that's so powerful. So this is just one local point in time and space that we are aware of, but we are so much more as well.
Do you think you have an implant somewhere in your body?
That's funny that you asked that. I kind of went through a period of time where I was paranoid about that. I really didn't want that to be the case. So I did do like a lot of body scans and things, and my connection, like the connection to the council, was an energetic connection. So I was able to sort of cut that cord. And so I do not believe that I have an implant, but I know people that have, and that have gone to great lengths to actually to get rid of them. I know other people who have them and are happy to have them. So it's kind of all how you want to be with it. But I kind of, like I said, sovereignty is very important to me. And I did go through a long period of wanting not to be influenced by anything other than the divine and my connection to the divine.
When I think of Anubis beings, I think of ancient Egypt. Do they have anything to do with Egypt?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that the Sphinx was an Anubis being, that obviously the head fell off and was replaced. But if you look at the posture of it, all of the Anubis statues have that same posture. And yeah, Anubis beings were very present, as in whatever we think of as ancient Egypt, which I also think of as a higher dimensional Egypt, or a future, even, in because we're living in a timeline. So in the concept that there is no time, that we're just experiencing time, I believe that there is a higher dimension of Egypt that is always active and currently in its power. But from our perspective here, it seems like it was ancient, the ancient past, if that makes sense. But yes, Anubis is there.
What posture were you referring to?
It's like sitting, okay, so if you think of the Sphinx, it's like the paws are out in like sitting on its belly, and then there's a tail that wraps around. If you look at Anubis statues and you look at the posture of the Sphinx, what we know as the Sphinx, it looks the same as the posture of the Anubis, the dog, who's more of a dog than a cat.
Can you tell us about your first encounter with them?
Yeah. Well, I think this was my first encounter. It was very, very powerful. So I have these experiences sometimes where I'm in between awake and asleep. I think we all do, if you can tap into that hypnagogic state. And I meditate there. And sometimes I wake up in the night and I'm in that state. And I don't always know if I'm asleep or awake, because it's kind of this in between. It's also kind of like a lucid dream. Or an out-of-body experience. It's like a hybrid of a lot of different things, I guess, but a state of consciousness. So I was sleeping, I was awoken by these beings, and really it was one hand. I remember one hand like coming down to pull me up through the veil, for lack of a better word, up through a realm of reality. And it was an Anubis being that pulled me up. And then I found myself reclining on a slab, we could think of it as like a golden not ceramic, I don't know, like a golden slab. I was just lying there. It wasn't uncomfortable. I wasn't thinking about that at all. And there were these Anubis beings around me, essentially like around my bed, if you want to call it that, but it wasn't a bed. And they were so beautiful and so regal. They were standing and they had on lovely adornments, and just, I remember their skin and their presence and their eyes were so powerful and so beautiful that I was just entranced by them. I was just like, wow, who are you? And what's going on here? And I knew of Anubis. I was aware of Anubis, but I didn't know, like, I thought it was just one being. I didn't know that it was a whole race of beings. And that's probably not the correct name. That's just what I call them, because that's what we know, Anubis beings. But they all looked like, the same, but they were different individuals of that race. And so they were so loving. They were so loving, and they expressed to me, and this was all telepathically. I was there with them, but they didn't talk with like moving their mouth. It was all telepathic. They told me that they're here to assist with the ascension of humanity, and they're present for really anyone that wants to work with them, that they are, you know, in an ascended state or an ascended realm, that they can offer energy, but they would never do that unrequested. And I do have well, at least especially at that period, I had an ongoing request that if there's any being that wants to work with me that is high frequency for ascension, I open the door to that. So they were not coming uninvited to me. They weren't infringing on my boundaries, which I do have strong boundaries now with all the galactics. So they showed me, and we think of Anubis, and we oftentimes see Anubis standing with a scale, like a golden scale, and a heart and a feather on one side. Like, and so when Anubis is the guardian of they say the guardian of the underrealm, but I really see it as the guardian of between this life and the next. And so when we're crossing over from this life into our next life, a lot of people will have like a life review or a review of their life. This is like, they're not judging us. What they're doing, or what Anubis does, is weighs the weighing. It's metaphorical, of course. Weighing, they're not going to actually weigh your heart, but your heart and your feather are metaphorical for your heart. Have you given up your burdens? Have you forgiven? Have you lived your life in a way that you're not holding and carrying heaviness? Are you living in light and in lightness like a feather? Is your heart unburdened? And to what degree is your heart light? Light as in not holding on to heaviness, dense emotions, density, sad things, you know, to what degree that you have given up your burdens and what degree you've forgiven and moved into a lightness of your being, that determines the proper place for you when you leave this world. So your soul or your spirit, whatever you want to call it, will go to, you know, you'll collect your energy and go to the next phase. And that weighing of the heart against the feather is the gauge of, okay, well, you've achieved this level of lightness or enlightenment, and so you belong here. So it's kind of like a sorting technique. And if you have a heavy heart, if you've held on to a lot of burdens and baggage, then you don't get to go to those higher places because you would be it would be too difficult for you there. It's not a proper fit. And so energetically, you must go to the place. It was just karmic and natural that you would go to the place where your soul is prepared for, where you're prepared from this life to go to the next realm. So that is their job. And their teaching is to give up your burdens, to live life in the lightest way, to have fun, to bring joy, to be a contribution, to serve from your joy, from your overflow, to not hold on to anything that, you know, any negativity, to forgive and be grateful.
If somebody wants to connect with them, how would they do that?
So I would say you would want to go into a meditation and set your intention. You know, this whole reality is based on intention and perception. So first of all, give yourself permission. Yes, I'm going to choose to work with the Anubis beings. Then, you know, get into a space where you feel really safe, where you feel connected to your divine presence and to God or whatever that is for you, where you just feel you're connected. I go into my heart center and I find my connected, centered space. Sometimes I do some deep breathing. I go into meditation and I quiet the mind, you know, shut all that down. And then I ask from my heart in the most authentic way, and reach out to, this is to Anubis or to any being or anyone that you want to connect with. Ask from your heart to make that connection. So for me, it would be something like, and I'm very visual, so I would visualize the Anubis being that I want to connect with, or beings, And then I would go into my heart and I would feel that connection and feel the goodwill, like the good energy between us, and then make an invitation. And you can say this out loud or not. I invite you to work with me, and I invite you to bring your presence to me, and bring your, your awareness, whatever it is. And if you have questions, you could say, I have some questions I'd like to ask, and I request, like an audience of you, some form of that. There's no right or wrong thing to say. It's more about the feeling, like to feel the opening of your heart, to invite them into your space, and then to enter in authenticity. And that's really what they're all about. And if possible, they will meet you on your frequency, but they're much higher, they're at a higher level of being than the density of where this realm is. So for most of us, like, you have to raise, this is why they lifted me up through the veils so that I could be where they are. And it's harder for them to come down where we are. So think about that. Like, get yourself in the most high space. If it's I do a gratitude, like send out gratitude in order to help make my energy lighter and uplift myself so that I can be in the highest place possible to have these interactions. I also put protections around me and really build this bubble of light and energy around myself so that I'm in the highest possible energy before I make any type of request for contact. Because if those things aren't in place, and if I'm like in a really low energy, and I don't have any protections around me, then there are things I don't want to invite into my space. So it's really important to me to have those boundaries and protect your energy, raise your frequency, and then go for contact.
Are you still in contact with them? And if so, have they revealed to you recently any special message for humanity?
Yes. Well, I am in a almost like an indirect way. Like, I can say they hold a frequency presence in my consciousness that I can tap into and connect with, and send and receive information from. So in a sense, it's like a channel. There's a channel to them. They're what they'd like to say to humanity is, it's really always the same thing. It's to live your most authentic life, to follow your heart and your truth, and to give up your burdens, and to forgive and be grateful and play and enjoy and have fun. And it's this is how we make our heart light. When you get to the end of your life, also service. It's service from your heart, service from your joy, not service because you have to, right? When we get to that point of being weighed, our heart and our feather, it's so important to have had fun, to look back on your life and be like, I took advantage in every opportunity to be light and to enjoy and play and uplift myself and others and have fun and really experience the joy of being while I was here. And even through all of the challenges and the trials and the upsets, have you overcome? It's not about not having those things happen. It's about, how did you handle them, and how did you lay down your burdens? Did you forgive? Did you remain a victim, because that's going to keep you in low frequency, or did you forgive and allow yourself to be light? And the more you can do that, the better experience you're going to have after you are done here.
Would you say then that forgiveness is the best way to release your burdens?
But I would say, if it's authentic, first, I don't ever want to tell anyone you have to forgive in order to, whatever, be somewhere you want to be. Like, if you're not feeling forgiveness, then you can't force it, right? So it's really this internal work of choosing to find and dig. Sometimes you got to dig for the good stuff that came out of every experience. Even if it's, okay, now that I've had that experience and it was very challenging and difficult, I have compassion for others who are going through that experience. Or because I experienced that, I now have a greater understanding of the world, or of how to overcome something really difficult. So if you can look at the things that you got out of it and that your soul has grown from, then yes, and forgive from that space, then that's going to be very uplifting and expanding and help you become enlightened.
What was the catalyst for you to change your name to Waxela?
Mhm. So yeah, so for starters, when I was a kid, I I was named after a celebrity's daughter. And when I was around 3 years old, I told my mom says I told her that she named me the wrong name. And she said, "Yeah, I know. I wanted it to be easy to find on the plaques at Disneyland or whatever." She's like, "I know that's really not your name, you know." So she was on board with it. So I for a couple of years I was traveling with a shaman who's a walk-in shaman, and we went to his mentor's land. And at that time I was going by Lotus, which was kind of like an interim name for me, and also symbolic of what I was experiencing during that time was rapid growth and unfolding. And so there were 13 medicine wheels set up on her land. She was a Lakota medicine woman outside of Prescott, Arizona, and every day, pretty much from sunrise to sunset, you were expected to be in the medicine wheels praying, doing consciousness work. It was very magical and like really an incredible place. So one of those days when you set your intention before you step into the circle, and one of those days I went out and I went into the circle, and my intention was to know my true name, or I want to say my more authentic name. And because I never felt like my birth name fit for me. And so I was in this medicine wheel, and I felt, no, it's like it's almost like walking into a spaceship or like a light ship. When you go into one of these wheels and you're in it, it's like your consciousness just lifts up, and it's this incredible feeling of changing realms. And so this was an experience where I was being uplifted. I was feeling all of this energy, and these two Mayan grandmothers showed up to be with me and give me this experience. One was in front of me and working with my heart energy, and she was doing this, making this movement around my heart. The other one was next to me, standing beside me, and moving her hand over my head, working with my crown energy. And what I understand now is that they were opening up my energy field to receive my name. And so then they in like this one eternal moment, they gave me my name. I received it through through my energy body, and in the same moment, I saw it, I felt it, I knew what it was connected to, and all of the other aspects of my being that were sort of in the collective of my name of Waxela, and it was spelled with the X, and I felt the resonance of the frequency of it, not just in my body, but in my energy field, in the totality of my being. I felt it to my core. I received it in such a multidimensional way that now I understand. I didn't know what was happening at the time, but afterward, now in retrospect, I understand that was an integration of the monad. It's called where a part of your higher self actually comes in or walks in to your body. And then there's an integration period after that where you're adjusting and adapting. So that was happening to me, and I received my name, but it wasn't just receiving my name, Waxela. It was receiving more of myself, more of my consciousness, more of my energy, more of my being. And so I knew that I was a different being. I was different after that. It took a while for me to figure out how to be Waxela, but I also know that the meaning of it, if we want to just put it into English words, is divine love. And so I knew that in making that my legal name, which I did, that would be every time someone calls me Waxela, it's reminding me of who I am and who we all are. And so it's such a beautiful It was a beautiful experience. It was incredible. And people will often ask, were they real though? Were those Mayan grandmothers real? And I can say it was more real than this experience here. They were more present, more energetic, more like I could feel like they had bodies. I could touch them. They were so real. They were beyond this level of reality because they were in a higher realm, and there was more energy to feel there. So there's more sensation, there's more awareness, there's more of all of it. So they were more real than, I mean, I know you're not sitting here with me, but if you were physically sitting here with me, I could say it was more real than you sitting there next to me, Jeff. They were so present.
What about your last name, Sananda? Does that have something to do with Jesus?
That is a great question. And so, yes, but not in the way that I think most people think of it. Sananda is a collective consciousness. So it's a collective consciousness that many, 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 many souls have come here from. And yes, Jesus was from the Sananda Collective. I'm from the Sananda Collective. You're probably from the Sananda Collective. The listeners, very large portion of them, if you're listening to this, you might feel it within yourself. You're probably from the Sananda Collective because it is a collective that is here for the ascension of humanity. It's a collective that's here to uplift the earth realm, and it's the collective so many of us came from. It's like I almost want to say like a soul hub. So there's no one person that is Sananda. It's many, 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 many of us, like a large percentage of, or just a large number of people that are in this realm are Sananda. And I have a personal experience with Sananda, which is why I made that my last name.
All right. I believe that you mentioned earlier that you had a life on Sirius B.
Yeah, yeah, that's so Sirius B is a water world. It's largely underwater or covered in water. And I've spent like I would say eons of time in Sirius B as a water being, but as many beings. So as a mer being, which is like literally what we think of kind when we think of mermaids and mermen, a almost like humanoid type of being. Not quite. I mean, I think they're in like the I don't know the Disney princess series or whatever. They're a little too human, but a type of being that's very fast moving underwater, very high consciousness, and we had like lots of crystalline structures around us. I've had lots of lifetimes that way. And then also as various water beings like whales and dolphins there. And then, but the thing that I'm most connected to, I mentioned earlier, is the light codes. I was a light code courier in the water where I would pick up information. Let's say there's a crystalline structure that's a habitat and it has information to share. Everything's alive there too. Everything's conscious. The places that we inhabit, everything has consciousness and an awareness, and that's known and understood that okay, everything's alive and aware. So I could move into a structure and pick up these codes, these light codes, and then move into another structure or being. I could deliver information from one place to another, or I could shapeshift into any being, a sea turtle, a whale, a dolphin, a octopus, you name it, any kind of a coral reef, anything, and deliver because I was light, so I could move in and out of things easily and deliver information. That was one of my longest lifetimes.
What are the light codes used for?
They're used for, well, like here we would get information in a variety of ways, but one of the main things are frequency adjustments. Sometimes there's a lot of different, I'm getting this in real time. There are frequency adjustments where you can, like maybe something's a little bit off in a being that needs a frequency adjustment. A light code can move into that being and make an adjustment so that there's greater balance and alignment, greater connection to everything around it. So it's also, I suppose we could think of it as a form of healing sometimes, but it's also a delivery of information. So when I say a courier, light code courier, Picking up light codes as a packet of information. You might think of it as a download if we're going to compare it to computer terms. I need to know how to, whatever, change the tire on my bicycle. We can get on YouTube or, online and get that information and then be able to do that thing when we read it or watch it. And so it was the same. Like I'd take a packet of information. Well, this needs to be delivered to this place or this space, and I'd be able to go in and deliver this information very, very rapidly because I was light. So there was almost no time needed. It was a way to exchange information.
Earlier, you mentioned the ascension, and that's a common topic on our show here. What do you think is going to happen? And do you think that we're going to go through some big reset?
I don't like to focus on some big reset. I used to, but where I am now on my journey is ascension is an inside job where we are, we get really focused on light workers and bless all of them and us because I consider myself one too. But light workers do kind of get caught up in healing others, healing the earth, healing, like creating the new earth and all of that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it really is this inside job where we need to embody the ascension ourselves and be the change, literally, like be the change that we wish to see. And so when we do that internal work and we open up, I call it the infinitely faceted diamond light of the heart, which is a portal to consciousness. To We can travel anywhere and get any kind of information that way. But as we open up the dimensionality of our being and our heart portal, we're able to access everything. And so this is part of ascension. As we are moving up in frequency, our consciousness is already ascended. Our higher selves, it's already done. So I think it's very important to focus on the body. And a lot of spiritual people disregard the body. They've had a lot of trauma, they've had body trauma. And it's easy to, I think this is where woo woo comes from, to like get up here, stay in your higher chakras, but not really inhabit fully the physical body. But the body comes from the earth realm and the consciousness comes from the ascended realms. So it's in order to really marry those two, the consciousness with the body, and be able to be the highest possible consciousness in our bodies, which is ascension, then we must ascend the physical body and bring consciousness into it in order to really have access to what ascension is, which is, you want to call it enlightenment or an expansion of consciousness. I do believe that at some point, when enough people have done this work and really become more enlightened, then yes, we'll have a massive shift. But I don't think that that's the right thing to focus on because that's putting our energy in a future time. And I know a lot of people are just waiting for that. And that's not the point of this life, to wait for something to happen. The point of this life is to take action and inspire things to happen.
So it sounds like you're saying that ascension isn't going to happen to us. It's something that we have to actively participate in and work on.
Yeah. And so here's the other interesting part of that, Jeff, is that, like, just like back to the Anubis with the heart and the feather, and how much have you laid down your burdens? The ascension is the same thing, where there are people that have done so much work, they've become enlightened, they actually can ascend. And that doesn't mean that you have to lay the body down. In a lot of cases, people do, but you can actually ascend with your body into the next level of awareness. And suddenly you're in a higher realm. You might not even know it. But if you think back, and I think a lot of the near death experiencers have had similar type experiences where they have, they're experiencing life and it's maybe very difficult and very heavy, and something happens, and then they have a death experience and they come back. Maybe they're in the hospital or some time has passed and they find themselves in like a lighter experience of life. And that doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does. And I believe that that is a type of ascension experience where you're really laying down your old life and your burdens from the past and entering into a higher realm. And you might not be aware that that's what just happened, but it can happen that way. And it can also happen through the meditative experiences, like I shared. I've shared a few of those that I've had with you. It can happen in a flash. It can also happen over an extended period of time. But what can happen is you might not, like when it's really extreme, a person might lose their body or not have their body, but sometimes they do, and they're just aware in a higher consciousness state of being in a higher realm. So it's like I think of the realms as like all layered on top of each other. And where you are at any given moment decides where you are in the consciousness realm. So I'm going to give you another, for instance. Are you familiar with chemtrails, the lines in the sky?
Yeah.
So there was a period of time where I'd had a really expanded experience. I'd just been out to Mount Shasta and had like some incredible meditations and awakenings and epiphanies. And I stopped seeing, like, I moved into a timeline which was slightly higher for myself, where no chemtrails existed. Came back to Florida, there were no chemtrails. I was walking around. I have another friend in the same town, and I'd be talking to her on the phone and like, I'm so blissed out, and I love that there's no chemtrails anymore. They don't exist. And, this went on for several weeks. And then one day I'm talking to the same friend, and she's like, Waxela, I see chemtrails out my window. They are there. Like I go outside all this time. I've been seeing them. You're saying they're not there, but we're looking at the same sky. What's going on? And the next day, I started seeing them again. So for me, what that says is I stepped into a slightly higher reality where that wasn't going on. And I was interacting still with all the same people here, but I was in a higher state of consciousness than I had been before. So I wasn't seeing the same reality that they were. And then one of my friends reflected to me, hey, I'm still seeing them. I'm still here where they are. And then the next day I kind of came down out of it. Even though I didn't feel a lot of difference, I'm like, they're back. So it can be temporary too. We can go up and down. So it's like I call it the spiral staircase, where we're ascending and we're always going up, really. We're always going up in frequency, but there's a light side and a dark side. And sometimes we're on the light side and everything's beautiful, and then we're ascending to a new level. And so we're coming around the dark side. We got to do some shadow work and clear that before we can see the light again on the other side. And that's just part of the way it works. It's not like you're done. You get to a certain point and you think that you're done with something. It's going to come back, but in a slightly different way or at a higher level to test you. Like, are you really done? What about this?
Hmm. It appears that the path of ascension requires some of our own efforts. What tips of things that we can do will assist us in our own ascension?
It does require a lot of our own efforts. And we, as a perspective-based realm and reality that we're in, we're given challenges. We're given all kinds of things to get upset about, to be angry about, to feel victimized about. And so the first step in the ascension process is to reframe your outlook, your perception of the world as everything is happening for me. Everything is contributing to me in some way, even the rough stuff, even the challenging stuff, even the negative stuff. It's all happening for me so that I can have some sort of soul experience or some sort of experience that will eventually evolve me and help me expand, help me open my heart, help me open my awareness, help me have more compassion, help me have more sensitivity and connection to others. And when we approach life that way, then everything that happens is really a contribution to us. And we have the ability to serve others through our perception. So I'd say number one is your mindset, getting your mind right and not being a victim of life and your reality. And the cool thing is that once you start doing that and you focus on what you're grateful for and you focus on your gratitude for what you learned from any given experience, and you focus on forgiving and loving and serving from your heart, then your reality shifts. You do ascend in frequency. So your frequency comes up. And then the experiences that you have match that. So what you're attracting is more harmony, more balance, kinder relationships, experiences that are going to uplift you more. So it's kind of like this, it's so worth it to do the work because you're raising yourself. So some of the ways that you can assist yourself in the ascension process. Number one, nature. I mean, number one, I said mindset, but next is nature. Just going outside and loving the nature around you. And then if you can do this barefoot on the ground, where you're either standing on the grass or the earth, where you start to also then simultaneously soak up the earth energy, bringing that into your body. It's very restorative, very uplifting for the body and the energy and balancing. And your biofield becomes more harmonious. It's just a beautiful feeling that happens. And then you can walk around the perimeter of the space where you live. If you're lucky enough to have a home, or even if it's an apartment, you can go to a park nearby if you don't actually have land around you. But go into nature and appreciate what you see. Appreciate the flowers. If you see a flower, smell it, take it in, let it, even there, I believe that even the pollen in the flowers have ascension codes for us. When you partake in that as almost like as a ritual, a sacrament, breathing in the essence. This is the beautiful essence of a flower that's bursting with love. And all it wants to do is share, so you breathe that in and receive that and then give your gratitude. You're going into a communion with nature in the most natural way, and it is going to uplift you. It's going to ascend your frequency. You can do this. You can find tons of different ways to do this. It's so easy and it doesn't cost anything. You just walk outside and appreciate.
What's great is sometimes one podcast will lead to another. And recently I had a guest share that she has heterochromia, which is the coloring around the pupil of the eye. And you heard that podcast and discovered that you have the same thing, right?
Yeah. It's called central heterochromia, where it's when the iris has it's sort of like a halo of one color and then another color, and then maybe there's a third color in the ring around the iris. And I didn't know until I was saying earlier, it was amazing that I was just doing dishes or something, and this podcast with Rachel Vaughn, I believe her name is, came on, and she started talking about central heterochromia, and all the hair on my skin started standing up. And I'm like, I just knew I had that, even though I'd never heard the term. I'm like, I have that. And then I went and looked at my eyes. I'm like, yeah, that's me. And I really connected with that. And so I did some research on it and found out there are a lot of names for it: angel eyes, magic eyes. According to Rachel, it's a genetic mutation that people that have it have a higher psychic abilities, or are more adept with their spiritual abilities, which kind of makes sense to me in my experience. They're also called, and I found in some cultures it was called changeling eyes. And so changeling eyes were the central heterochromia was considered, they believed that a fairy being or some sort of mystical being had come to the child and replaced their soul with a fairy soul. And that's why they have these unusual abilities.
Do you know whether you have Rh negative blood or not?
I don't know that. I don't think so. I mean, I think I would know. I avoid hospitals and getting my blood taken at all costs. So I don't actually know, but I mean, I think I would have been told that if I did, but I'd have to find out. I don't know.
Well, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
Absolutely.
What's the best way to contact you?
Okay, well, there are a number of ways. The best way is to go through my website. It's my name, waxelasananda.com. I do have a contact form on there. You can sign up for my email list there. I reach out once or twice a week. I send emails with, uplifting things and things that I'm up to in my life. And so you can reply to any of those emails, but you could also fill out the contact form. And I also have a YouTube channel that people could tune into, and I try to read all of the comments and respond there as well.
Now, you're also the author of the book, The Love You Crave. What should someone get from reading that book?
So, yeah, it's called The Love You Crave, A Course in Ascension, Alchemy, and Connection to the Divine. And it's really about my work, which is I call embodied ascension. And I've talked about it a lot during this podcast about raising the frequency of your body to be a greater container for your consciousness or the higher aspects of your consciousness. And I have a lot of different techniques in there that I share for someone to do this work. I mean, it is an active book. There's some stories and there's some things about my life that I share, but I also have various ways and techniques and meditations that you can link to and listen to and find uplifting. And so my intention is really that people find a pathway to greater joy and greater ascension and expansion from reading that book.
What else are you working on that you want people to know about?
Yeah, well, I'm a podcast and summit host. I will have another summit. It's called the Alchemy of Ascension. So my next summit is going to be at the beginning, I believe the beginning of 2025. Haven't chosen an exact date for it yet, but I love to do those and they're a ton of work. So I really pour into everybody that way. And it really lights up my heart to be able to share so many great speakers and people just like you do on your podcast. And and my embodied ascension work and my YouTube channel. Those are the main things.
When you say you have a summit, is that kind of like a small convention or something?
What it is I do them online. So I will interview, we'll say 25 to 30 people in a short period of time. I'll take all of those interviews and put it in a format where people subscribe via email. And then day by day, they get these interviews, and all of the guests give free gifts. And we have some live events. And so it really does create this feeling of community regardless of where someone is in the world. And you have opportunities to tune in live and tune in, virtually and be part of this evolving community or community of consciousness evolving.
Before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
What I'd love to leave you with is that it's really a time to focus on your joy and explore having more fun in your life. I see so many spiritual people get so serious about their spiritual path and their ascension path. And that's not a bad thing, but remember that your heart must be light. And we are here to enjoy this realm and have fun and have beautiful relationships and appreciate nature. So find what brings you joy, what makes your heart happy, what puts a big smile on your face, and do something every day to promote more joy and more that will open your heart and that will make you feel good. And when you feel good, you're able to contribute and serve others in such a beautiful way. So I'm just going to leave you with have more fun.
Shayla, thank you for your message and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate you inviting me and being with me today. Thank you.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.